This is a show of 83 works by a gentleman by the name of Charles J. Miller. And Charlie went into the Second World War in early 1942, right after Pearl Harbor. The pieces that we have here are his visual renderings of what he saw and also his thoughts, because they're not only works of art, they're also historical documents.
Enola Gay, no date. Every time I went to Harmon Field to do some sketching, I would spot this bomber and would say to myself, what a funny name for a girl. Must be the pilot's girlfriend he left back home. 2 weeks later, this bomber dropped the atomic bomb on Japan.
Charlie was born in Nashua, New Hampshire, in 1906. When he was a child, he exhibited a talent for drawing and painting. But by the time he was in the 6th grade, it was during the Depression, and it was necessary for him to quit school and go to work in the mills in Nashua like his mother and father. And so from the time he was about in the 7th grade till about 19 years old, he was obsessive in the way that he decided to teach himself to paint and draw.
B-24 Liberator Bomber, Guam, 1945. At Harmon Field, walking along the side of one of the runways, a big B-24 Liberator bomber swoops down, ready to land, with its wheels already down. It seemed to me that I could almost touch it. Other B-24 bombers circling the field, waiting their turn to land as they returned from a bombing mission somewhere in the Pacific. A Hawaiian hulu hulu girl is painted on the bomber, life-size. I sketched the bomber from another group that was already parking on the ground.
When he was 19, he enlisted for the first time in the Army. He'd enlist 3 more times before World War II. Then in 1942, he was drafted. He was 36 years old. So Charlie went in and went into the Field Artillery and became part of the Pacific Theater.
Nighttime Artillery, Marshall Islands, no date. Marshall Islands. This is a night scene. About 1 a.m. or around 1 a.m., the Jap bombers pulled a raid on our occupied islands. 2 Jap bombers went down in flames, seemed to have lit up the whole sky. That's me on the right of the picture under the big palm tree. Also in the foxhole. The guys on my left, one is from the south, the other from Ohio.
Charlie left his work when he passed away to his sister Anna, and Anna left the works to her daughter, Nancy Dennis. And Nancy and Bob Dennis are the ones who have been the caretakers of these works for the last 40-some years. They had them in a box under a bed, and so the color on them is pristine. It's wonderful. No light has gotten to them, so they look like they were done yesterday.
Washing Down the Decks, 1944. Almost every day while the fleet was roaming the Pacific, the ship's sailors, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, would wash the top deck with a big fire hose from one end of the ship to the other end. There was no, please will you move. If you didn't move quickly enough, you'd get it, like this bunch of guys did. They just keep moving with this high-pressure hose. After they get through, the ship looks like it went through a big storm. The top decks soon get dry, and everybody is back on deck, sitting around, etc. 1944.
Charlie said in some of his writings, I wanted you to see what I saw, and that's exactly what he did. But the nice part is you also hear what he thought, because in these works he wrote down what he was looking at and what he wanted you to see in the works.
Embarkation officer yells, 1944. The embarkation officer yells at the invasion barge crew to hook the cables good so the barge won't be banging the sides of the ship while the GIs climb down the nets. Some artillery shells from the distance somewhere are missing the island when they hit the water. It looks like a geyser shooting the spray way up. As soon as the U.S. troops landed on the island, the Navy stopped firing their big guns.
Charlie estimated they did over 700 of these drawings when he was in the Pacific. We have actually cataloged 487 of them. And I chose 83 to put in this show. It's a show, as I said, that I think is a national treasure, and I think the images are so important for people to see because they talk about war in general. But what they talk about is they talk about all the periods of terror and war, but they also talk about the mundane, sort of boring things that happen in between that terror.
Homemade washing machine, no date. On Cannon Island, the boys made a homemade washing machine. You have to wait till there's some wind to be able to wash your clothes. Here I wait my turn, as one of the battery men is about to get through with his washing, saying to me, "Just a second, I have more towels here to wring out." I said, "That's all right. Take your time, buddy."
He puts himself into the paintings, but he was very humble about his talents. He would see artists who had been assigned by the military to do drawings and paintings, and he would say, "Oh, I wish I could do that," because they're real artists. But he never considered himself a real artist. He never exhibited the works.
LaSalle Railroad Station, Chicago, Illinois, December 1945. LaSalle Railroad Station, Chicago, Illinois. For over 3 hours in this railroad station, there was nobody around the place, and all at once a huge crowd showed up. In less than 10 minutes, all the trains were pulling out, loaded with people going to different sections of the country. I sketched this picture from a photograph from the National Geographic magazine of LaSalle Railroad Station, but I sketched the people from memory, the way they looked when they all of a sudden rushed in, placing myself in the crowd. An Army MP spots me, asking me where I was going, pointing at me. I said, "Boston." He said, "Go ahead." Maybe he wanted to make sure I was taking the right train.